Josh, well said. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I have actually prepared cards to chat with you this evening because I'm slightly intimidated, I have to say. Honored by the opportunity to be part of this first UE TED Talk, as I call it, but slightly intimidated, and even more so now that I am at the end of this amazing program. I thought Larry Joseph was going to be a really hard act to follow. Well, it just kept getting better and better and stronger as we went along. Josh asked me to come this evening and talk about setting goals and going beyond your goals. What happens after you achieve them? Basically, draw from some of your examples, Wendy. And he said, don't talk about that Miss Universe thing, eh? Try not to go there, because we've heard that already, and that's what people know about you. And we want to know the side of Wendy that most people don't see, don't know. Which is very hard now, particularly after I've released my first book, because I sort of put it out there. In the thinking about this topic, setting goals, I'm nervous a little bit, and I prepared cue cards because I honestly don't remember a time in my life where I set very precise goals. I had very broad goals as a kid. I wanted to be a fashionable lawyer, I remember very clearly. I wanted to be an amazing mommy and wife. And I wanted to be the best me I could be because that's what my parents told me I had to be. Not, don't follow anybody else. You know, you're my firstborn, Daddy used to say. You could be the best you. Made a lot of sense to a 4-year-old kid. Even at 16, it didn't make that much sense to me. In reflecting a little bit on my life, I realized that I didn't have that much to say this afternoon to a large extent, so I started to do a little bit of research into some of the people I admire. Some we know very well and probably also admire, like the Oprah Winfreys of the world, the Nelson Mandelas, others who have done phenomenally well, and we're not so sure how we feel about them, like Ted Turner and Jack Warner. And yeah, amazing guys, very well accomplished, those two gentlemen particularly, but they seem to both miss that little box in their brains. You know, that box that we all have where you check a thought before it comes out your mouth? And totally lacking. But what delightful men in their own right. And I've learned a lot from them, and there are lots of similarities in our experiences. I recently, well, not recently, a couple of years ago, I read Ted Turner's biography. And he, like many of us, he wasn't so sure where he was going to go in his life. You know, his dad was in the advertising business. His father was the king of billboards in southern USA, generally, the whole South, which is a lot of billboards. And he just wanted to one-up his father. He just wanted to take advertising to another level, because when he was coming up, advertising was moving into the digital TV era, and he couldn't get into mainstream television. So he said to himself, you see those little odd cable companies, these little independents all over the place? I am going to make sure that I corner the market in terms of advertising on cable. And from that, and trying to get his ads, place his ads in the quality programming he wanted and couldn't find it, the idea for CNN came to him. And very piecemeal, sporadically. He didn't dream it. He didn't wake up one morning with the big, I am going to create CNN. Didn't happen like that at all for Ted Turner. Didn't happen like that for Colin Powell. Certainly did not happen like that for Mr. Nelson Mandela. The man still makes up his bed to this day. Because in his head, he's not Madiba Nelson the Great. He is simple, humble Nelson Mandela. And in my own experience, I think about the things that really changed Wendy's course, you know, from universe to the birth of my son to going to this school. A lot of it happened by chance. A lot of it was not terribly deliberate. It's what I did with those by chance opportunities and what Mandela did with them and what Ted Turner did with them and so many others, and Larry Joseph, who presented this evening. What I'm trying to say is that, like Ted Turner to some extent, like Mandela, like Larry Joseph, and like so many others, what really sets you apart in my analysis, and what helps you to keep achieving and moving beyond those achievements that seem so tremendous, is the recognition of opportunities when they arise, and to a large extent, a positive attitude. Like, is your glass half full or half empty? Is, you know, when life throws you a lemon, you know, do you gripe or do you, like, whip up a margarita? I go with whipping up a margarita almost every single time. Recently, the last 5 years have been some of the most challenging and the most enjoyable years of my life. 5 years ago, I gave birth to my son, which by all accounts should have been exceptionally traumatic, because I was so unknown for relationships, anything related to intimacy to a large extent. You know, our people saw me, I learned during that experience, very much as almost a modern-day Virgin Mary, but not quite. And that's because I purposely never put that part of my life out there. My private life, as it were. Not that I ever hid or pretended to live in a way that was other than what I presented. It's just that when you're in the public eye, you know, people tend to focus on what they see most of. You know, I'm quite sure that Mandela, and we know Ted Turner and Jack do it sometimes, but Oprah flips the bird occasionally if they get upset. But that's not who they are fundamentally. They are generally very decent human beings. And if you are, what I've learned over the years is that if you are well known, all popularity, so-called celebrity, does is amplify your traits, your characteristics. You know, so if you are like Oprah, who I think is an excellent communicator at heart and a social worker, you just come across as the best, the greatest one there is. She is a phenomenal businesswoman too, but if you look at the pattern of her life and all of the goals she has achieved, all of the amazing things she has achieved, she uses them consistently to help others. And that's what she gets off on. That's what I think gets her up on a morning. So that's her big, broad goal. Now, when Oprah started that television show, how many ever years ago, I honestly don't think Oprah Winfrey had the intention of becoming this super billionaire, owner of her own network, blah, blah. Oprah admits that she enjoyed reading very much, she enjoyed communicating very much, and loved to talk. Just couldn't help herself and enjoyed knowledge tremendously and wanted to share that. And that passion drove an entire industry. You know, Nelson Mandela just wanted to free his people. You know, I'm quite sure, you know, for all those years, rotting away or not, he certainly wasn't rotting away in a jail in South Africa. He didn't think that he would have, his plan wasn't necessarily to change the world, to change his country in the way he did. Yes, he had a goal he had focus in terms of freeing his people, but his objectives for his life seem to be very much like Oprah, being the best them they can be. They both blazed trails in ways in which we as people never have done before. I'm by no means an Oprah or a Nelson Mandela, but I come back to what Daddy and Mommy told me, you know, as looking back at the start of primary school, which was just before my 5th birthday. Be the best you can be, Wendy. And that's why I think in terms of goals, setting goals, they never seem to be, not that I'm never ever satisfied, but my focus is very general. In that I am, I hope, a fashionable lawyer. You guys agree? I hope I'm becoming a very good mother. And I hope I am being the best Wendy I can be at any particular time, and I'm taking advantage of the tremendous opportunities that come my way. And as I mentioned, for me, and in terms of looking at the persons I really admire, a few of whom I've mentioned, they really take life's challenges and make tremendous opportunities out of them. The guys I admire to a large extent, and in terms of moving through each phase of my life, are also the ones who have a certain level of integrity, not a great deal of integrity, and are just honest with themselves. And one of our speakers spoke about that a little earlier, the importance of knowing who you are, because that's how you become the best you can be, by really being in touch with who you are. That sounds great, but I think I only really begun to understand that phrase in raising my son, Elan. I'll give you a little example of how, and there have been many instances in the last 5 years of how Elan has helped me in terms of my honesty, acceptance of who I am, and moving beyond those limitations, and setting new goals, and achieving those, and moving, and moving, and moving. The best example for me is addressing sexuality. Something that, as a UN Goodwill Ambassador, I've talked about extensively. I've put it all out there in my book. And in interfacing with my child, it's unbelievably scary. Forced me to ask myself a few questions. A few months ago, in August of last year, Elan is born in April, so he was just after his 4th birthday. A few days before he was going to Atlanta to visit his dad, he said to me, one morning as he's getting off his bed, I go to his room to wake him up and hang out with him a little bit before I go to work. As he's getting off his bed, he says to me, Mama, sometimes when I'm getting off my bed, my penis feels so nice. I wanted to die. And I think of myself as a very evolved, very comfortable in her skin young woman, very liberated, sure of who I am. I stepped back. All of this happened like in nanoseconds, and I said, Elan, that is lovely. I'm not joking. Honey, that is arousal. That's your sexuality. Big words for a 4-year-old. Arousal, Mama said, yes, that's that nice feeling, honey, and you should enjoy it. He's like, yes, I do. I said, but you can't spend your entire day and night living for that experience. You enjoy it when it goes, and there's a time and a place, like everything else, honey, when it's appropriate. Like I've taught him chocolates and sweets only after a meal to close your appetite. But you can't sit all day long and eat sweets, and very much the same way, you enjoy your arousal. But you can't run around all day long trying to achieve that feeling to the detriment of everything else in your life. And that was good for him. At that point, he got it. That forced me to think a lot about, I had spent so much time giving speeches on youth sexuality, and here is my youth. Just mentioning very casually his sexual awakening, and it rocked me to the core. And in doing my homework and thinking about my own experience, I realized that that's not something we're terribly comfortable talking about at all. That's a goal for Wendy, and that's a very, very important goal for me. Why? Because we lambaste our West Indian men, particularly us ladies here. The degreed ones, the ones who are terribly professional, they don't know how to deal with us, blah, 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 blah. But we are raising our young men. And as a society generally, we are raising our young people, each other, to be very uncomfortable with our sexuality. So how do we move beyond that? Think about it. With everything, with homosexuality, with sexuality period, with your next assignment, you only get comfortable with anything when you understand it, you internalize it, you apply it to you, your circumstances, and then you move beyond it. You can't share if you have nothing to share. So I did, quite a bit of homework after that. Am I approaching this thing with Elan the right way? Should I, speak to someone, therapist, somebody? I need to talk to somebody. Did quite a bit of reading and actually spoke to someone who is a therapist, who does this on a daily basis. Luckily, a friend of mine, and her answer was, Wendy, I didn't even have that conversation with my children. She's a little older than I am. And her kids are now young adults, past college. She's like, and this is what I do every single day. I could give everybody else's child and everybody else on this planet advice, but in terms of interfacing with my own at that intimate level, almost impossible. Now I realize, now that you guys have me here today, having this conversation with you, that that's a goal for me. A goal that I had no intentions of. You asked me the day before, Elan said to me, Mama, my penis feels nice. I would have never thought that changing the view of a young man in terms of sexuality and how he addresses his sexuality and his level of comfort with his sexuality is a goal of mine. But it certainly has become that. I have this conversation regularly with my girlfriends now. I'm having it with you now because I hope after today, this is something, when your kids come to you and want to talk about their sexuality, you're going to swallow like me, hopefully, and go brave. Honesty, being in touch with who you are and your limitations and moving beyond it. For me, that is probably the most potent example of that in the last year or so. And then moving beyond your limitations. I thought about a couple of other characteristics that everyone who is able to do that, who's able to move beyond those goals that seem so amazing, how do they do that? How do they keep morphing into new, interesting, exciting goals and tremendous levels of success? They're not afraid to fail. There have been many, many, many of those for me and for everybody else. We always hold Bill Gates up as this, and he is, a business genius in the IT space. But think about how many failures Microsoft has had along the way. Several of them. You know, I think I drive really well. All of my friends tell me, Wendy, you drive like a man. You handle a car, a truck, anything like a man, which is, of course, a huge compliment in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, because apparently men drive so well compared to women. I failed my first attempt to get my driver's license. And I made up my mind, didn't get out of the yard, could not do that little L turn, whatever it's called, I can't remember now. Blanked it out at that time. And I probably drive like a guy, and I could parallel park, and this is no BS, I can parallel park a motor yacht. And it's because I failed that first time. You know, I made sure that 3 weeks later when I had my test, there was nothing I could not do in a car, including apply mascara and lipstick while going over the lady young. I had it down. After I got my license, my first trip, which freaked my mother out, was to Maracas Beach. She said, but you failed the first time? You just got your license, as in yesterday, Friday. It's Saturday morning, we going where? Maracas Beach, yeah. And think of all of the projects. What is it, Zoom now? With Microsoft. Remember that little, it was supposed to compete with the iPod, was it? Right, that one. But think about how many successes Bill Gates has had along the way. You know, coming back to Ted Turner, you know, he said in Call Me Ted, in his book about his life, that he doesn't see his so-called failures as failures. They are lessons in how to win. And that really stuck with me. Lessons in how to win. Our culture, I think the world over, but Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean particularly, our school system is where Britain was to a large extent at our independence in the early 60s. And we are from birth almost, not from almost, from birth, told that failure is a bad, 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 bad thing. That having setbacks means that you will never be able to overcome them. Consistently, those setbacks for me throughout my life, looking at them now, have always spurred me on to achieve in spite of. And I'm not sure where that comes from. Maybe it's the hard work that my both parents put into my sister and I, and the exposure we got. For two seemingly simple people, they were everything was okay. Does that make sense? But they never cleaned up our mess for us. And Larry talked about this a little earlier. And in terms of moving beyond your limits and moving beyond those goals that seem so grand, that's very important. Being able to make your mistakes, but clean up your mistakes too. You know, today, and it's hard, let me tell you, a lot of my friends, a lot of young adults who have kids of their own spend an unbelievable amount of time trying to clean up their kids' mistakes. It's okay to dig your way out of a hole. You know, Larry Joseph's life, as he described it, seemed to be a series of very deep holes, right? And look at where he is today. Similarly, I think of the times when I did very well. It was under particularly difficult circumstances. As I said, I didn't plan to win Miss Universe or even enter Miss Universe. I wanted to be a fashionable lawyer. If I was going to do anything in entertainment, I was going to be like Naomi Campbell, I thought. I want to be Naomi Campbell and Christy Turlington and those 6 fabulous supermodels roll into one with their collective incomes. But Universe came my way via Peter and was a tremendous opportunity. But at the same time, that was a very difficult time for me. I was at law school when I entered Miss Trinidad and Tobago, and my parents were going through the most difficult time of their breakup. Not a lot of people know this, but the Monday morning after I won Miss Trinidad and Tobago, and the photograph of the three queens, the TNT Miss Universe, TNT Miss World, and I can't remember what was the third competition, appeared on the front page of the Express newspaper. In that newspaper, our home in Diamond Vale was up for sale. And we had no idea. This was part of the fallout in terms of the difficulty that my family was facing at that time. You know, Dad had left home a couple of years before and had made certain commitments and just wasn't living up to them. And it was an exceptionally difficult time for my sister and I, but we were so determined. Any opportunity, we were going to go run with it. You know, I think back to Universe. It didn't really happen by chance completely. My introduction to the world of pageantry certainly did happen by chance, but once I was in it, I ran with that opportunity. I took the time to prepare and understand what I had gotten myself into, and I was determined to represent my country to the best of my ability and to continue to do that post. You know, those opportunities, surprisingly, from something that, you know, is as fleeting as that, because every year there's a new one, continues to come my way, and probably because of my approach to that particular activity. It allowed me to be, to a large extent, Christine, Naomi, Linda, and Cindy, all rolled into one. You know, I had the opportunity to walk some of the world's most amazing catwalks. I still have endorsement deals outside of the region that came as a result of that opportunity. Exactly what I wanted to do in terms of, or thought I wanted to do in terms of the world of fashion, but presented in another way. And thank God I took advantage of it. You know, I could have said to Mrs. Sabini, lovely chatting with you, ma'am, no thank you. And that would have been the end of that. But I ran with that. The other thing that, and this is the last, Josh, how am I doing on time? The last thing I want to say is that perseverance is absolutely important in achieving and moving beyond your goals. And why? Because, as Larry said, as I'm saying now, it never comes easily. The things worth having in life never, ever do. And you don't stay on top of your game. You don't move beyond the here and now if you don't have perseverance, if you don't have the wherewithal, the mettle to keep going and going and going and going. And I'll give a couple of examples in my own life, and then another friend of mine whom I beat up on regularly because he presents himself as such a limer slacker. I don't know what he calls himself now. Sean, Puffy, P. Diddy, Combs. This is a guy who, at the start of his career, you know, before there was Cristal, Kim, and J-Lo, left Howard University every single Thursday afternoon to go to Uptown Records and wash Andre Harrell's car. I'm not joking. He was so determined to break into the music business, and via that particular company, because he liked the direction in which they were going and he thought it was the best place for him, knowing what his passions were, his skill sets were. You have to appreciate, You know what is happening in the United States now? It's winter. You know what's been happening for the last few months in America? I want you to imagine as a relatively struggling Howard University student getting in your car, or getting on the train rather, every Thursday and going to New York City to wash the car of the president of a record label. It took Puffy roughly 4 months of washing Andre Harrell's car before he was allowed into the building. Less than 10 years later, Puffy hired Andre Harrell to run his company. Andre Harrell has since been an employee of Sean P. Diddy Combs. Total focus, total determination, perseverance like you cannot imagine. And still to this day, you know, he puts himself out there as a guy, the big partying guy, all the shoots of him in furs being fabulous. He works still 16 to 20-hour days every single day. I've been to a few of his birthday parties. He comes out around 1 o'clock in the morning and he does the whole, and he greets everybody. He's working the phone. He is reviewing documents. He's talking to this one in Tokyo all the time. Okay, unfortunately, the behind the scenes never puts that aspect of who he is out there. You know, the morning after the party when everybody is sleeping at his fabulous Miami pad, he's feeding with his mother his twin daughters. Nobody sees that. You know? Very, very focused, very determined, and total perseverance, total determination to succeed at being the best business, music, entertainment mogul he can be, to succeed at being the best father he can be, and moving beyond. You know, he's built an amazing empire in entertainment. I would say it's time to rock back and relax, right? No. He's trying to do it now in film. There's so many productions that he produces, movies that he produces. Some of them do phenomenally well, like Monsters Ball. Many others tank, but he's focused. In the film industry, this is a guy who has built a $500 million empire in his lifetime in roughly what? He started in the mid-90s. Think about that. And he's now doing the equivalent of washing Andre's car every day in Hollywood. Maybe he's inside the building, but he's still washing that car. A few lessons for me. I'm facing quite a transformation now professionally. And once you've achieved a certain level of success, comfort in a particular area, it's sometimes very hard to make that adjustment. But I'm quite sure I'm going to have a couple of failures, but I'm very, very determined to continue progressing, moving. This is the year of building Wendy and taking the Caribbean with me. Last year I started a little bit with my radio program, which was well received. There have been a couple of other projects that I've been working on which have not been nearly as well received by the corporations that usually are very supportive of me. But I'm going to follow the Puffy example. I'm going to keep washing those cars until I do have a breakthrough in those new areas. Thank you.